So this week, InvestEngine have cut their SIPP account fees to zero, making them one of the cheapest SIPP providers regardless of portfolio size. And with my ISA allowance being maxed out in this tax year, I've been on the fence as to whether I should start contributing to a SIPP. But this update to the InvestEngine SIPP has brought it back to the front of my mind, giving me the kick I needed to get started with regular contributions. SIPPs, or self-invested personal pensions, are one of the most tax efficient ways to invest. And in this video, I'm going to run through exactly what a SIPP is and how it differs to an ISA, take you through the exciting updates to the InvestEngine SIPP and why it is my top choice, before finally showing you how I have constructed and updated my new InvestEngine SIPP portfolio. Before we begin, always remember that these videos should not be construed as financial advice or investment recommendations. They're made for informational and entertainment purposes. When investing, your capital is at risk and you may get back less than invested. And the tax treatment of your investments depends on your personal circumstances and may be subject to change. Okay, so let's get started with definitions. A SIPP is a type of pension that allows you to take control over your retirement savings. You can break down the name into two components: self-invested and personal pension. It's one of a few different types of pension we have in the UK. On the other hand, a stocks and shares ISA is a tax-free investment account. There are other types of ISA like cash ISA, lifetime ISA, and innovative finance ISA. Most are familiar with cash ISAs, but unlike a cash ISA, a stocks and shares ISA allows you to choose what you invest your money into. That's the basic definitions, but in order to get a good idea of how they compare, we need to go through a few different topics. And I'll start with the most complex: tax advantages. So, firstly, with a SIPP, the major advantage is that you get tax relief on all your contributions. The amount of tax relief you can claim does depend on your income tax bracket, however. This chart offers a great way of visualizing how it works. You can see that with a £100 pension contribution example, a basic rate taxpayer would only need to pay £80 into their SIPP, and the SIPP provider you use will automatically claim £20 from HMRC and add it to your account. For higher rate taxpayers, they'll also be able to claim a further 20% back from HMRC by completing a self-assessment. And for additional rate taxpayers, they'll be able to claim 25% back from HMRC via self-assessment. What this means in practice is that a £100 SIPP contribution costs a basic rate taxpayer £80 in take-home pay, a higher rate taxpayer £60, and an additional rate taxpayer £55. So regardless of your tax bracket, there is a very nice tax incentive to contribute to a SIPP. Moving on from tax relief, the tax advantages do not end there. Cash and investments held within a SIPP are not subject to any tax on interest, dividends, or capital gains. In essence, your money in a SIPP is shielded from these taxes. However, you may have to pay tax when you withdraw from a SIPP, as it is classified as income. Although with smart planning, there are ways around this, as you may have your personal tax-free income allowance available, and there's also the 25% tax-free lump sum. I'm not a financial advisor though, and the optimal way to withdraw from your pension will be unique to you. Okay, looking at ISA tax advantages now. This is much simpler. With an ISA, you do not get any tax relief on contributions, so whatever you deposit is what you have available to invest. However, like a SIPP, your cash and investments held within an ISA are shielded from tax on interest, capital gains, and dividends. And unlike a SIPP, there is no tax to pay when you withdraw from an ISA. So in a sense, you get tax relief on the way out, whereas SIPPs come with relief on the way in. The next important topic to cover is allowances. As they are tax-advantaged accounts, the government does set limits on how much you are able to contribute to them. With a SIPP, you can contribute up to 100% of your earnings, and this is subject to a maximum of the current annual tax year allowance of £60,000. The tax relief added by your SIPP provider does count towards this allowance. It's also worth keeping in mind that this allowance is for all types of pension, so your workplace pension will also be utilising your allowance. Both your contributions and employer contributions count towards your pension allowance. There did used to be a pension lifetime allowance, but this is currently abolished, so there's no cap on how much your pension can grow to over its lifetime. But of course, as with all these rules, it may be subject to change. With ISAs, on the other hand, there's an annual tax year deposit allowance of £20,000, which is your total allowance for all types of ISA, not per ISA. So for example, if you contributed £10,000 into a cash ISA in a tax year, you'd only have £10,000 of your allowance remaining to contribute to a stocks and shares ISA. And at the moment, there is no lifetime allowance on the value your ISA can grow to. Okay, moving on to another important topic. When can you actually access the money? As a SIPP is a type of pension, it can only be accessed at pension access age. This is currently age 55, but it is raising to age 57 in 2028. And then who knows beyond that? Let's hope it doesn't go too much higher. On the other hand, with a stocks and shares ISA, there are no restrictions on when you can withdraw. You can withdraw at any time and without any penalty. In this sense, it's a lot more flexible than a SIPP. Okay, the last topic I want to cover in the SIPP versus ISA discussion is the final portfolio balance. And what I mean by that is, what will your contributions to both types of account lead to in the long run? To put simply, the same contribution to a SIPP and ISA will always lead to a greater final portfolio balance in a SIPP, because the tax relief means you have more funds available to invest and compound over time. Now for the exciting part, jumping into my new DIY SIPP on InvestEngine. Well, I say new, but I did put £100 in at the start of the year when the InvestEngine SIPP first launched, and that was just to try it out. I wasn't too sure then if I was going to invest in it further. At the time, I invested into the same ETFs as my ISA, so that is why there is a gain of around 16% showing here. But I have sold the ETFs that initial £100 deposit plus tax relief was in, and moved all the money alongside an additional £1,000 contribution that I've made recently to the couple new ETFs I've selected. So with that £1,000 contribution, I should receive in the next 6 to 11 weeks the £250 basic rate relief that I'll then be able to invest as well. You can also see on the side here that I've set up a savings plan of £100 per month, and InvestEngine savings plans are basically just a way of automating regular deposits via direct debit, and then if you activate auto invest as well, as soon as the cash from the direct debit hits your account, an order will be placed to invest into your portfolio in the next trading window. I've set it up as £100 because it means I'll have a regular investment going in, but it's not too high that I have to worry about having enough money to put in each month. Instead, I can make additional top-ups manually if I have some extra cash I want to put in. Okay, scrolling down to the portfolio, you can see I've selected 2 ETFs. Now, before I explain my decisions here, this is just my portfolio, and what's suitable for me may not be suitable for you, so this should not be construed as any form of investment recommendation. So the first ETF here is the SPDR MSCI ACWI or ACWI ETF, with the appropriate ticker ACWI. Now, my reason for including this one at a 90% weighting is because I decided I wanted to keep my SIPP relatively simple and hands-off, with a standard global tracker at the core having the greatest weighting. And this ETF is now the cheapest global all-world UCITS ETF available on InvestEngine as far as I'm aware. If we look on the page of the ETF here, we can see it has a total expense ratio of just 0.12%. For comparison, the Vanguard FTSE All World ETF has a TER of 0.22%, and the Invesco FTSE All World ETF has a TER of 0.15%. The reason why you may not have heard of this one before is because they've only cut the fees relatively recently. We can see in this article here that the fees were cut from 0.4% to 0.12% back in August. So it went from being one of the most expensive global funds to actually now one of the cheapest. And in regards to it using MSCI ACWI rather than the FTSE All World as the index benchmark, both MSCI and FTSE are both massive index providers, and in practice there's little difference between their all world indexes. You can see on the MSCI ACWI index fact sheet here that it tracks 23 developed markets countries and 24 emerging markets countries, and covers approximately 85% of the global investable equity opportunity set. Returning to InvestEngine, the other ETF in the portfolio is the Legal and General Russell 2000 US Small Cap ETF with the ticker RTWP. So as you can tell from the name, this ETF gives me exposure to US small cap companies. I decided to include it at the remaining 10% weighting because the global ETF only includes large and mid cap stock, so it gives me that bit of diversification into small caps. But also, unlike US large caps, US small caps are relatively reasonably valued from a forward price to earnings perspective. So it is a small bet by me that maybe they can offer some good returns going forward. But I have no way of knowing for sure, and it's only a 10% weighting for that reason. One interesting point about this ETF is that if we check the key investor information document, we can see that it actually tracks a Russell 2000 index with a quality filter, which I am a fan of, as you know, and it should help remove some of the junk stocks from the standard Russell 2000 index. And as this ETF is accumulating, it's a nice alternative to the iShares S&P 600, which only comes in a distributing version. Last thing I wanted to quickly show is the analytics tab to give you the idea of the overall breakdown. You can see it is about 67% North America, so that will be slightly overweighted compared to just having a global fund because I've included that US small cap ETF. It's then 9.5% Europe excluding UK, 4.6% Asia ex Japan, and so on. Switching across to the holdings, these will just be all the top companies you're used to seeing with a magnificent 7 at the top. As I always say, I do enjoy the analytics on InvestEngine and seeing how much I've indirectly invested into each company. Overall, you can see it is a pretty simple portfolio, especially by my standards, and the plan is to just regularly invest and not think too much about this portfolio. As I can't access it for 30 plus years anyway, I'm happy to keep it simple and hopefully over the long term let compounding do its magic in the background. That is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, then please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more investing content. I'm excited to share this new SIPP portfolio going forward, and don't forget you can get yourself a welcome bonus of up to £50 on InvestEngine if you sign up via the link in the description. Terms and conditions do apply, and as always, thank you for watching.